Hey guys, what's up? It's coming for the winner. We're back for another edition of Monster Hunter Rise. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at a highly requested 2.0 Endgame Dual Blades build. So we're going to be using the Tiastra Twin Nails weapon, although it's not completely maxed out as of this update. Probably in the next one it will be. Tiastra Dual Blades are pretty good because of Tiastra Soul. We're going to be using Flame Seal, that way we get Critical Eye level 4 and it has good resistances. We're going to be using Jelly Vest S for Blast Attack level 2 that we're going to be gemming in. We're also going to be using Kaiser Van Braces, which is from the Tiastra set as well. This gives us Tiastra Blessing and Critical Eye, as well as a good level 2 gem slot. We're also going to be using Kaiser Coil for Tiastra Blessing and Critical Boost, and Golden Hakama as well for Critical Boost, and a Latent Pair that we're not really going to use. For the Petulance, I would recommend that one. Talisman, I got a Weakness Exploit level 2 with 2 level 1 slots. Preferably, you would want 2 level 2 slots, but RNG, you're at its mercy. So let's break this down a little bit further for you so you can see the breakdown in terms of full stats. Attack 185, Blast 36, Ice 36 because it's a dual weapon, Affinity 50%, 467 defense, 14 fire resistance, everything else is minus for the exception of thunder. It will give you, for the skills, Critical Eye level 7, Critical Boost level 3, Weakness Exploit level 3, Blast Attack level 3, Speed Sharpening level 3, Windproof level 2, Tiastra Blessing level 2, and a Latent Power just for the heck of it. Full breakdown, Critical Eye level 7 gives you plus 40% affinity. Critical Boost says increased damage dealt by critical hits to 40%. Weakness Exploit attacks that hit weak spots have 50% increased affinity. Blast Attack level 3, Blast Buildup plus 20% and an increase of 5 blast damage. As you can see, Speed Sharpening speeds up sharpening. Tiastra's Blessing says builds up fire attack and blast. And Latent Power not going to come in too handy here. It's just on there because of the pants. As you can see here, this is what really makes these dual blades really good. Tiastra Soul says increase the rate of blast buildup, and blast buildup has a maximum limit. So you're just going to make more meaty damage. Here it is. Tiastra, increased damage dealt by blast explosion. So you're looking at like 144 blasts when they hit. Alright, for the purposes of this showcase, we're going to be fighting two monsters. We're going to be fighting one that's super quick, so it's going to be the Great Izuchi. That way I can show you the general basics of the dual blades. This armor set in particular for this build kind of forgoes a lot of the evasion that my previous build did, and it kind of goes more heavily on the side of abusing affinity and critical hits, as well as doing a great amount of damage thanks to blast buildup that is with your Tiastra's Blessing, as well as the blast buildup skill that we've gemmed in. So you're going to have a lot of advantages. What you are going to have to keep an eye on is your gauge, because unlike the previous set where we had the power prolonger on it, we do not have it. Subsequently, you could remove maybe 2 or 3 levels of Critical Eye, although I do not recommend that for an attack boost. Since this is primarily focusing on doing critical hits and exposing and exploiting critical hit damage, my recommendation is keep it the way you see it here. That way you can get significantly fast clear times. Keep in mind, this is not a speed run, because I know there will be somebody in the comments who decides to mouth off about this being not a speed run. This is a guide for newer players and maybe some intermediate players looking for a good set. Now, as with always with the dual blades, they are a super fast melee damage. So my recommendation, keep it simple, keep it grounded, build up that gauge super fast as you see here. When you have it in the max red gauge, you can keep hitting the XA button 3 times in a row to do the maximum combo, and it will do a lot of damage. As you can see, every hit that we are dealing to this monster is dealing a lot of damage. When you see 144s pop up on the screen, that means that the Tiastra Soul ability that is on your weapons is going off, where it increases the amount of blast damage. So as you saw there just a couple seconds ago, 144s. So for this build, it's critical to always go after the monster's weak spots. Now, what would the monster's weak spots generally be? For most monsters in Monster Hunter Rise, and just in every Monster Hunter, rule of thumb, its face usually is the weakest part of the monster. Usually then, sometimes it's the tail or the wings. Very rarely will it be under the legs, unless it's some really weird monster like Bizarrios. But most of the time, what you want to do is aim for the face, trip the monster, knock it down, and just go ham on the face. Now, when it comes to the switch skills, I'm going very basic here, because most monsters, you're really not going to want to go too aerial on them with the alternate switch style for the sheathing weapon when you are in demon mode. The reason for that is that it's kind of very high build-ups, and the faster, smaller monsters tend to move out of the way or knock you out of the hit. So you could do a lot more damage just staying grounded and going just basic default with the dual blades. However, you're facing a slower moving monster, such as maybe the Tetradon, or maybe even Bizarrios and stuff like that. You can kind of switch the switch style and then go a little bit more aerial, but it's my recommendation you're going to get more damage by staying on the ground and just doing combo after subsequent combo after subsequent combo. We mounted the monster here. The reason we're going to do that is, as I mentioned in previous videos, you do more damage when you play this minigame and you get more shiny drops. Obviously, great Azuchis are not really that great for rare weapons. You're not going to need really the pieces, but Great Azuchi is a good kind of example to show you how much damage this is just going to be chucking out. For the second showcase, we will be fighting a flying monster, so you can see how that fares against a flying monster. Dual blades are really good against slow-moving targets. They're good against fast-moving targets, because dual blades, when you're in demon mode, allow you to evade. So if you wanted to, and you had maybe a good level 2 slot talisman with weakness exploit, maybe level 2, or if you got like critical boost, you could kind of play around with some of the gems that you have, and maybe even add back in evade window or evade distance. That way you can give yourself some more breathing room in terms of dodging. One thing that you're going to notice, particularly with dual blades, which is their vice, is if you are in demon mode, you are going to burn through your stamina quite a bit. You could, if you wanted to, again, you would have to probably forsake attack, which I don't recommend if you're just trying to go for super fast and efficient and speedy clear time, is you could take out maybe 2 levels of critical eye and then replace it with stamina surge if you wish. That way you can get a little bit more stamina. In my personal opinion, you're not really going to need that much stamina, because even here, as you see, abusing through stamina and burning through my sharpness, I'm able to handle this Great Azuchi very, very quickly, thanks to the fact that blast build up and the fact that dual blades just hit multiple times and are probably one of the best weapons in terms of DPS. That's damage per second, for those of you who are not familiar with that terminology. Since it dishes out a lot of DPS, you're able to do a lot of damage, which means you are able to get the ticks of blast going off a lot quicker. Subsequently, if you have a good poison dual blades or you have a good power one, you could also kind of play around with the set a little bit in the opposite direction. I feel blast is probably the best way to go, because this is one of the best dual blades available as it stands for the 2.0 update. This is obviously going to change in about another week to 2 weeks when we eventually see the 3.0 update, in which we will get the final bit of content that was supposed to come out originally with the game's release, but unfortunately, because of everything that happened with the pandemic, they had to kind of break up parts of the update to be able to get this out in time, which is what they ended up doing with the game. As you saw there, we pretty much handled the Great Azuchi, its tail, to itself on a silver platter. It's a matter of just maintaining your combos. Whenever you're in demon mode and you have the monster down, definitely go for the triple XA combo. So it's simply just XA, XA, XA. It will deal a ton of damage. You will deal a lot of hits. Preferably, you want to do that combo when the monster is down or exhausted and not mobile, because when you are in that combo, it's a bit difficult to cancel out of it. The only way you really would be able to is if you cancel the actual demon mode, which you would do by hitting the ZR button. Other than that, really, there are times where you could get punished, which is my recommendation. Save your demon gauge, really, for when the monster is down or it has stopped moving and is exhausted. That way you can just maximize the hits, because if not, you're going to be probably wasting a lot of your demon gauge. So that was a 5-minute and 44-second clear time. If we were in a group of like 4 people doing this, we probably kill this in about a minute flat. If you're doing a village quest, you probably do it in 30 seconds with this build. Alright, guys, so this will be the second and final showcase for this 2.0 Dual Blades build. We're going to be fighting a flying monster here. That way you can kind of get a handle as to how well this particular Dual Blade set will fare against the many clever of flying monsters that you are going to encounter in your journeys of Monster Hunter Rise. So, first things first, obviously, we have to locate the Raffian, which is my favorite punching bag. Also, it's a good kind of monster to show people what not to do in terms of aggression, because you can get super aggro with the dual blades, and if you do, you will get punished for it. Particularly newer players have a tendency that they will kind of focus on button mashing because they think this is a button mashing weapon. And to a certain extent, yes, it is, but the more button mashing that you do, the worse off you might be, because you're just going to be mashing combo after combo, maybe locking yourself into potentially getting hit if you are not very familiar with canceling. So keep that in mind. All right, same strategy as before. Unfortunately, unlike our previous set, we don't have high-grade earplugs here. We make a couple of sacrifices in order to deal out more damage. We'll go in demon mode and start building up our white counter. Obviously, there's 2 gauges of demon mode. The first one's the white bar. After you get the white bar maxed out, you then start maxing out the red bar. When you have the bar maxed out at red is when you're going to be able to do the largest and greatest amount of damage. In particular, also, what's good about demon mode is you can dash around kind of just walking normally. So you're able to dodge out of attacks that normally a nerd type of melee weapon does not have a distinct advantage of dodging with outside of using maybe evade extender or evade window. On the ground, simple combos. Again, just go for the very simple basic bread and butter. You can mix it up. XXA, XXXA, AAX. You pretty much have to experiment with it. I'm not going to go super in-depth with that because this is something that you can just simply check out the weapon controls that are available in your options menu for that. Same strategy as before. We want to do critical hit damage. In order to do critical hit damage and abuse weakness exploit, we are going to have to go for, in this particular monster, it is the face as well as sometimes the wing. You don't really get any damage if you stay under here. It's good to stay under just in case it's firing fireballs, but usually after the triple one, just abuse the face as you see me attempting to do here. You're going to be dealing a lot of damage. Keep in mind, since this is DPS damage per second, you're able to get off a lot of 33s and 35s, so for the naked eye, chances are it's not looking like you're dealing a lot of damage, but you're actually getting off more damage than if you were swinging necessarily, let's say, the Greatsword, where it's slow, super powerful hits. Let's get on the Azuros here. That way we play the minigame. Keep in mind that minigame does more damage to the monsters, and you have high percentage of getting your shiny drops. I have, while fighting monsters, gotten mantles. I've also gotten rubies this way, so it is usually in your benefit to do these games, or these mini-games. Obviously, if you're trying to speedrun through something, this will take a little longer off your speedruns, but if you're speedrunning Monster Hunter, chances are you're probably not watching this video anyway for that particular type of information. Up in the air, if you want to, you can go back into demon mode and start mashing the buttons. Since the monster's down, we're just going to go into the basic demon mode combo. It's really just keep it down, pin it down, do your XA, XA, XA combos. Particularly against flying monsters, in my experience, they don't stay down too long unless they're exhausted, so you have to be very careful when you're doing that particular triple combo. Raffians, on average, you'll learn this stuff as you learn the nuances of monsters, and that particularly comes from a lot of repetition. You have to play through a lot of monsters to learn their patterns. On average, a Raffian probably after its trip will stay down about 3 to 4 roars, which would be about between 8 to 10 seconds, roughly. So you have to keep that in mind. Same strategy again, guys. You're always going to want to focus on the head. Obviously, flying monsters avoid their attacks, such as fire ones, tail swipes. We'll stay under the legs here just for a second. That way we can target the tail. Keep in mind the tail is actually a weak spot for the Raffian. Anytime you see yellow numbers, it means that you are dealing critical hit damage. Anytime you see white, you're not doing maximum amount of damage. If you're using a different type of weapon and it's super effective, like in terms of elemental weaknesses, although not too many people use too many elemental weapons outside of the bows because the bows get a significant buff thanks to it, you would see blue. And if you see blue, that means you're doing even more maximum damage because it's super effective. All right, so we are going to pretty much target the face again. Positioning when you're doing the demon combo of XA, XA is kind of important. Case in point there, that's a perfect example of me getting a little too greedy with the combo, which will leave you open. The only way I would have been able to break out of that is if I had canceled with the ZR button, which unfortunately I didn't read the monster as well as I probably should have in that retrospect. So keep in mind, with dual blades, you can get a bit too greedy sometimes, so you have to kind of micromanage. That's why I always say it's kind of better to try to avoid really using your demon combo and gauge too much unless you have the monster really pinned down. Okay, I gotta move away here, because as you see here, I got a little too aggro, and we are not trying to card in the video, because that is something you definitely don't want to do, especially if you're playing online frowned upon. One of the things about dual blades in particular is you will burn through sharpness quite a bit. If you had a better talisman, there is potential that you could probably put handcraft gems in here. You would need very godly talisman with good slots. Honestly, you're not going to really need handcraft for this particular armor set. You have grinder anyway, which will speed up the sharpening, and chances are you're really not going to want to sharpen unless you don't see the monster near you. Still, you're going to be able to dish out a lot of damage. A good thing about particularly also using blast, which is something people don't realize, is you have a higher potential for getting monster breaks, particularly part breaks. So, like, you see how there's a lot of part breaks that were going on. Dual blades also can cut the tail, although I would recommend, if you're playing in a group, leaving that to a greatsword user or a longsword user that have a better chance of cutting the tail, and you can focus pretty much on different areas. It depends on what your role players are in terms of the group. Gunners do like to see dual blade users because it helps with their damage per second output. One thing about dual blades is you have to kind of attack in moderation when you're in groups, because since it's a weapon that moves around quite a bit, you have high potential of tripping and knocking your opponents on, or not your opponents, but your partners on their behind, which is very frowned upon when you're playing online play. Let me dodge out of the way here, or I could get hit with the poison. That works too, I suppose. All right, she's down. We're going to go straight here and go into XA, XA, XA. You can then spice up the combos again, constantly focusing on the head. This is what you are going to want to do for the majority of the monsters. And a very good thing about mashing your XAs and just kind of abusing that combo is most of the time you will be able to maintain your demon gauge at max. So this is kind of one of the reasons why we are not using any really power prolonger gems on this particular armor set as opposed to the original one, because you don't necessarily need power prolonger. It was just something nice to have in prior to 2.0 because there weren't that many skills and there weren't that many gems available and there weren't that many viable dual blades outside of the Magna Malo. This dual blade set performs significantly better than the Magna Malo dual blades, ironically, because it's Tiastra, and the Tiastra Soul really allows you to get extra damage out, because every time those blast explosions go off and you see a 144, you know that you're doing it right. Okay, case in point, our Raffian is in blue, so we're going to stay by the legs, give them potential to tripper. We are in demon mode, so we are a little bit quicker, and we are able to evade bit. As you see, she is drooling. That means she is exhausted, so we will target the face, which is something that you generally will want to do, as I've mentioned many, many times so far in this demonstration of what you should be doing with this particular armor set. Go back into demon mode here. All right, see, we're locked into the combo there. I should cancel, but I'm not going to because she is kind of slowed down and drooling. Chances are she's going to run away pretty soon. Go under the legs, obviously, because you see the tail swipe coming. As you play with dual blades, you will learn monsters' patterns, and you will know where particularly your safe spots are. She is roaring. She's going to probably limp away. We're probably going to have to chase after her because she's going to fly up. Yeah, pretty much. She's flying away. Before we do that, we probably should sharpen our weapon. Don't be bad like me. Usually don't let the monster that's just running by you sharpen in front of them. That's kind of disrespect to the monster. You could get punished for it, but whenever possible, try to keep your sharpness at blue and green, preferably blue. Obviously, if you're in the heat of battle, it's not going to be as manageable. For those of you who don't know, when you see the blue icon on the screen, top right-hand corner, that means that the monster, if you wanted to, is capturable. It also means it is very close to death. Obviously, depending on the monster, depends whether you want to capture it. I don't really need Raffian gems, which is why I just opted to go for the kill instead. If I wanted gems, it would be better for me to capture it, so keep that in mind. Alright, guys, so as you can see, we pretty much handled that Raffian with this dual blade set. even faster than our previous dual blade set from obviously 1.0. I would say in terms of dual blades, this is probably the best set to use. Another good thing about it is thanks to the many level 2 slots that you have at your access, you can play around with this build. You don't necessarily have to have it at critical eye level 70. Or not level 70, but level 70. You can kind of swap out a little bit of it if you want a little bit of attack. You can kind of play around with things. You could swap out the talisman if you have like a attack boost one with weakness exploit. There are many, many different ways you can kind of modify it. My recommendation would be keeping it at 50% affinity this way, because if you're at 50% affinity with weakness exploit and critical boost, your clear times are significantly going to go down compared to if you use different skills on the set, which is why I would recommend going exactly with this build. Again, it's up for your own interpretation. This is just a guide and a recommendation as to how I feel would be the most effective way for players to play the dual blades as it stands. This is obviously the updated build that many of you have requested. On Wednesday, we will be covering the Switchblade 2.0 build, which was another weapon that was greatly requested, a 2.0 build for that. So that is coming on Wednesday. And then the end of the week, we will be covering the light bowgun Magnamalo, which is very good for 2.0 as well. As you see, 10-minute clear time, that's pretty good in a group of 4. You probably get that down to 4 minutes anyway. That's going to do it for today. As always, a like and subscribe on this video are greatly appreciated as it helps the channel grow, and I will see you for the next Monster Hunter Rise.